My friends, I hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday. The latest discussion surrounding the Detroit Lions brings something fans have been waiting to hear, and this time it is not based on rumors or speculation. It comes from two different evaluations that both point in the same direction. One focuses on individual talent, while the other looks at the team's outlook for the upcoming season. Together, they paint a picture that should give Lions fans even more confidence about what this offense is capable of accomplishing. The first major piece of news comes from PFF's top 300 fantasy football rankings for the 2026 season. While fantasy football is obviously different from real football, the rankings still reveal something important. Elite fantasy players are usually the ones who consistently create explosive plays, score touchdowns, pile up yards, and remain involved every single week. That is exactly why seeing Jahmyr Gibbs sitting at the very top of the rankings stands out so much. What makes this especially impressive is the company Gibbs is keeping. He is ranked ahead of some of the biggest offensive stars in football, players who have already established themselves among the league's elite. For Detroit fans, that is a powerful statement because it confirms what many have believed ever since Gibbs entered the league. His ability to impact a game goes far beyond simply carrying the football. His speed changes everything. Every time he touches the ball, there is the possibility that the play turns into a massive gain. Whether he is running between the tackles, bouncing outside, catching passes out of the backfield, or creating mismatches against linebackers, Gibbs has become one of the most dangerous offensive weapons in the NFL. What is even more interesting is that PFF projects him to become an even bigger part of Detroit's offense this season. With David Montgomery no longer on the roster, the structure of the running back room has clearly changed. Instead of operating with the same 1-2 punch that Lions fans became familiar with, Gibbs now enters the season as the unquestioned featured back. And that brings us to the second major piece of news, because it was not just PFF highlighting the Lions. Another national evaluation also gave Detroit fans a reason to feel optimistic heading into the season, an NFL. Come projection ranking, the teams most likely to go from worst to first place the Lions in a position that immediately caught people's attention. Considering how competitive the NFC North has become, that says a lot about how this roster is viewed from the outside. Unlike some divisions where every team seems to finish around the same record year after year, the NFC North presents a much bigger challenge. Every divisional game is expected to be physical, competitive, and capable of changing the playoff picture. That makes any positive projection even more meaningful because it reflects confidence in Detroit's overall roster rather than simply taking advantage of a weaker schedule within the division. One of the biggest reasons behind that confidence continues to be the offense. The expectation is that Jahmyr Gibbs will take on an even larger role, with comparisons being made to Christian McCaffrey's style of usage. That comparison is not about copying another player, but about how a complete offensive weapon can be utilized. The idea is not to turn Gibbs into a traditional workhorse who simply runs between the tackles over and over again. Instead, the expectation is that Detroit will maximize every aspect of his game, getting him involved as a receiver, creating mismatches against defenders, using motion, outside runs, screens, and explosive opportunities where his speed becomes almost impossible to defend. That type of usage allows a player to influence every level of the defense without exposing him to unnecessary punishment on every snap. Another factor working in Detroit's favor is the schedule. A more favorable slate of opponents creates additional opportunities for an offense that already possesses one of the deepest collections of talent in the league. If the offensive line performs as expected, that advantage only becomes larger. There is also growing optimism surrounding several young contributors who are expected to continue developing. Blake Miller is viewed as an important piece at right tackle, while Cade Mays is expected to provide an upgrade at center. Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge both enter the season with another year of experience, giving the offensive line an opportunity to become stronger through natural development alone. Then there are the skill position players surrounding Jared Goff. Jameson Williams enters what many consider the prime stage of his career. Every season he has shown more confidence, more consistency, and a greater understanding of Detroit's offense. His speed forces defenses to account for the deep ball on every snap, creating additional space underneath for everyone else. Another player expected to take a significant step forward is Isaac Taslea. Last season, opportunities were naturally limited because of how many established playmakers already existed within the offense. When a team already features Amon-Ra St. Jameson Williams, Sam LaPorta, and Jahmyr Gibbs, there are only so many touches available each game. That does not mean Tesla lacked potential. Quite the opposite. The expectation now is that his second season brings a noticeable leap as he becomes more trusted within the offensive system. Experience often leads to greater confidence from the coaching staff, and that could translate into more opportunities throughout the year. Perhaps the most reassuring aspect of all this optimism is that so much of Detroit's offensive identity is already established. There are very few unanswered questions on that side of the football. Jared Goff has consistently produced at an elite statistical level over the past 3 seasons. The offensive line remains one of the strengths of the roster. The running game appears ready to revolve around one of the league's most explosive athletes. The receiving core continues to offer multiple threats capable of changing a game at any moment. That continuity gives the Lions something many contenders hope to achieve every offseason: stability. The real mystery heading into the season lies on the opposite side of the ball. The defense remains the biggest question that nobody can fully answer yet. There is optimism, but there are also legitimate questions. Detroit's aggressive defensive identity has always relied on creating pressure and forcing offenses into mistakes. When that pressure is working, the defense becomes extremely difficult to attack. But when the pass rush fails to arrive consistently, that aggressive style becomes much harder to sustain. Getting Aleem McNeill back healthy will be an important piece of the equation. The Lions also need Aiden Hutchinson to continue performing like one of the NFL's premier defensive players. Just as important, they need someone to consistently produce on the opposite side of Hutchinson. That has been one of the biggest challenges throughout his career in Detroit. Previous attempts to strengthen that spot, including Marcus Davenport, ultimately did not deliver the consistent production the defense needed. Until someone establishes themselves as a reliable complementary pass rusher, opposing offenses will continue dedicating extra attention towards slowing Hutchinson. That uncertainty is what separates the offense from the defense entering this season. Fans have a very clear picture of what Detroit's offense should look like. The defense, however, remains a work in progress, and exactly how it evolves may end up determining just how far this team can go. There is still confidence that adjustments can be made. Dan Campbell has repeatedly shown a willingness to innovate throughout his tenure, whether through aggressive fourth down decisions, creative offensive concepts, or his overall approach to building the team. He has consistently demonstrated that he is not afraid to think differently. Now the hope is that same creativity helps the defensive side find answers as well. If the Lions can pair an already elite offense with meaningful defensive improvement, expectations surrounding this team could become even higher than they already are. As we get closer to the season, the excitement surrounding Detroit continues to grow, and these latest evaluations only reinforce why so many people believe this roster has the talent to compete at the highest level. The encouraging projections become even more interesting when you step back and look at the bigger picture. What both evaluations have in common is that they are not focused on a single player or one isolated statistic. Instead, they both arrive at the same conclusion from different directions. One believes the Lions possess the most productive fantasy player in football, while the other believes the team is positioned to make one of the biggest jumps in the league. Neither opinion exists in a vacuum. They are built around the idea that Detroit has assembled an offense capable of overwhelming opponents in multiple ways. That starts with the balance this roster offers. Defenses simply cannot afford to concentrate on stopping one player, because every adjustment creates another problem somewhere else. If extra defenders move toward Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff still has Amon-Ra St. working underneath, Jameson Williams stretching the field vertically, Sam LaPorta attacking the middle of the defense, and additional receiving options that force secondaries to stay honest throughout the game. It creates the type of offensive environment where every player benefits from the others. Gibbs' explosiveness forces defenses to respect the running game. That opens throwing lanes for Goff. When defenses shift coverage toward the passing attack, Gibbs becomes even more dangerous with the football in his hands. It is a cycle that allows Detroit to stay unpredictable while attacking defenses in different ways from week to week. That is one reason why PFF's confidence in Gibbs is so significant. The ranking is not simply based on talent. It reflects the belief that the offensive situation surrounding him is one of the best in the NFL. Even with so many capable pass catchers sharing touches, the expectation remains that Gibbs will receive enough opportunities to produce at an elite level. It is also worth remembering remembering that this projection comes despite acknowledging offseason changes. A new offensive coordinator always introduces questions because every coach has different tendencies. Some coordinators prefer spreading the football around equally, while others are comfortable building everything around one elite playmaker. The encouraging part for Detroit is that the expectation is not for Gibbs to lose opportunities. Instead, there is optimism that his workload could actually increase while still being managed intelligently. That distinction matters because there is a difference between giving a player more touches and putting unnecessary wear on him. The comparison to Christian McCaffrey reflects a player who impacts every phase of the offense without simply becoming a traditional power runner carrying the ball 30 times every week. The objective is efficiency rather than volume for the sake of volume. Meanwhile, the offensive line deserves just as much attention as the skill players because everything starts there. One of the easiest ways to overlook an offense is by focusing only on the players scoring touchdowns. Yet the evaluations highlighted just how important Detroit's front continues to be. Tate Ratledge's development represents one of the most encouraging storylines. His rookie campaign showed noticeable improvement as the season progressed, and the numbers back that up. Finishing the final 12 games without allowing a sack while giving up only 4 quarterback hits demonstrates remarkable consistency for a first-year guard. Those are the kinds of performances that build confidence heading into year 2. His run blocking also provides another reason for excitement. Detroit's offense has always been at its best when it establishes physicality at the line of scrimmage before creating explosive plays through play action and creative formations. If Ratledge continues improving, that identity only becomes stronger. The anticipated addition of Cade Mays